We're all wielding this extremely powerful tool, and yet most of us are rather unconscious about the possibilities and the force that it may have. I'm talking about language, of course, as you may have noticed by the title. I want to raise your awareness towards this topic of language and the power that it has and the power that it doesn't have. Or maybe just remind you of a few things that you already may be aware of. That depends. But this is like an introductory video to a lot of, to a whole category which has to do with language and words and speech. And this is just a rough overview video of maybe a few things to come, and you can choose whether you're interested in the other videos or not with this index video. Yes, so basically language is a means of transportation for something. And if you think about it, that something usually is emotions or information. And an interesting thing that I came across when I thought about what exactly language transports is that, information, when you really look at this word, it has this meaning of something is already put into formation. Like, it sounds almost solid. Like something is I always see these basic shapes when I hear the word information, like a pyramid or a cube or something. So it really sounds solid, at least to me, while when you hear the word emotion, that is something that really sounds more like it's fluid. It's more like a wave to me. It's not solid, and I'm not sure exactly about the roots of this word, but I'm pretty sure it has to do with the word motion. And I don't know whether it comes from Latin or Greek. I have no idea. But I find it a funny detail that this is less solid. And I'm kind of imagining a ruler or a dimension, if you want, where on the one side we have emotions, and on the other side we have information, which is in a sense already stripped of its emotions. So what can be conveyed with language? I said it's a means of transportation, but means for what? Okay, so information and emotion, basically. There's always different layers, of course. If people communicate, there is, for example, the layer of intention and, relationship between people. There's so many things. I would just enumerate a few here. So you can convey intentions, for example, with your language. You can convey lies, or you can convey defamations. You can create a complete worldview with language, which gets really kind of obvious if you think about that in different languages, different concepts exist or don't exist. And insights, of course you can convey insights with language, which is what I'm doing here. But coming back to the worldviews, so I heard I recently saw a video and they said some scientists looked at languages from, how do you call it, native people, like living in a jungle and so on. So there's I think they had 10,000 languages, roughly, native languages that they looked at. And they found that in none of these languages there is possessive pronouns. Isn't that crazy and amazing? And I don't know, this is insane. Or let's say maybe our language is insane. Just think of this whole group, this whole category of problems that we create in our Western civilized world that stem from, oh no, this is mine versus this is yours. I found this insight that these languages do not have concepts for possessive pronouns. Really, really amazing. And just if you think of this simple example, it should give you an idea of how powerful language is. Like we've really been programmed with these things by our family and friends and the whole society and whatnot. And yeah, it's just like, maybe you can begin to grasp the importance of which words are being used when you grew up. It's extremely important. The very the most interesting thing about language, in my opinion, is that it's in a sense abstract. With abstract, I'm not talking about abstract art. Abstract means that something has been taken away from it. Because what is right now, what is reality, that is. But if I'm talking, I produce sound waves, and the sound waves are also reality. But if I describe something with words, that is never the reality. That is just an abstract representation of something. But of course, it cannot be the original thing. So if I'm saying chair, of course, this is just, a tiny concept of all the chairs that exist. So I found this so interesting. So you have this mental construct of, for example, a chair. Although every chair is individual, no two chairs are the same. And we have this abstract concept of what a chair is. And then we use a word for this to describe it. And somehow, if you communicate that to someone else, because he has also like mental constructs and concepts, he can relate to that. But if you really think about it, if you say chair, it's, besides the sound waves that are emitted, it's empty. And yet we do communicate and it works. It's kind of magical. Like I see this connection where, okay, I have this mental construct here. Then I'm using language to convey it. And then at someone else, it also enters into the brain and triggers different concepts. Which brings me to the next point. So not only is it a pointer, to something, and never the real thing, but also it's very individual. Because for you to really understand what a word means, let's say a word that is accepted by society, you must also have your own experiences with it. Let's say being in love. How do you want to say I was in love if you have never been in love? So someone needs to have the experience first, and then he can use the word to relate to this. Otherwise, it's just like a completely blank term. Or if you have a foreign language and someone uses a word from this foreign language and you have no idea what it means, it's just, yeah, the sound waves arrive at your ear, but it doesn't connect to any concept that you have. So this is another very interesting feature about language is, okay, so there's this representation in your head, but if you talk to someone, you also need to find the right docking spots, so to say, and try with your language to really express exactly what you want to say, because the other person may have a completely different view, or let's say maybe rating or something, of the word that you're using. So I could say nerd in a conversation. And maybe for me it's a positive term. And for someone else it may be a negative term. So while I'm using it in a positive way, the other person may, for example, feel offended by it, or the other way around or whatever, because the concept is different. It's not as easy as in chair, where everybody agrees on what it is. But because it has to do with experiences and with, like, some terms are just a bit more blurry than others. Yeah, this is another aspect. It depends on the context in which you're using it, which adds another layer of, let's say, difficulty if you really want to clearly communicate. And my appeal to you is that you communicate as clearly as you can, because it makes it easier. Like you save the other person time by asking what you actually meant. So if you are clear in your head and you communicate exactly what you want to say and not just some blurry because you're not sure yourself what you want to say, for example, and that arrives at the other person, it saves time for him and for you. And I think it's overall something that we should strive for instead of being wishy-washy. Does the term exist in English? I don't know. Like this blurry, this blurry thing, and the other person has to guess what you want to say. So first, also be aware, what I'm saying here, be aware that for some terms that you may consider positive or negative, it may be the other way for someone else. So that may also lead to avoiding certain terms, because maybe like God, because everybody will have a different idea of what God is, and everybody has a different understanding. So with this word, except for, if I establish a base and kind of bring the definition out myself, I try to avoid that word, because everybody has a different idea what it means. And if you want to clearly communicate, it's a source for disaster if you use expressions like this. Another aspect that over time I think you should come to is asking yourself, what is the intention of whoever is talking? That may be in the media, it may be someone talking to you directly or whatever, or a newspaper. So try to look behind the words, behind the sentences, and ask yourself always, what is the intention of this person? Is it someone that just wants to make money? Maybe doesn't care about you, wants to rip you off, or doesn't take responsibility for whatever happens and is just interested in getting your money? Or is that maybe a coach who's really interested in helping you, and he's really like connected to you, and he has positive intentions? I think it's really important, because otherwise you may be lured into traps or something just because words are used, right? So people use words to trap people and to create stories that are obviously not true. I just say the word marketing here, and I think it should be pretty obvious that they are crafting words and expressions to trigger something in you, which is also something that I want to motivate you to not be triggered as easily by the words that they, whoever that is, are using, and not buy into their worldviews, because with their language they are creating worldviews, and they want you into their concepts and ideas. So if you, what's the term in English? Conspiracy theorist, for example, is a word that has been specifically crafted. It's not a word that has been grown organically, no. It has been crafted to induce a certain idea in your head. So they can use it as a buzzword to defamate someone. Denunciate, defamate, to talk negatively about someone. And I mean, there's so much to say about these things, but in this video, I just want to point to the fact that you should not be triggered as easily by certain words, and you should not be drawn into the worldview of someone else just because they are using certain words which try to trigger something in you. And that's why I say it's important to know the intention. And you can ask yourself, does his or her intention align with my intention? And if it doesn't, you just say, sorry, not interested. I want to do a small experiment with you now, which may take a minute or two. And for this, I really want you to listen closely and don't do anything else right now, because it may lose its effect. I'm going to read a few words now, as neutrally as I can. And just take a look at what these words do to you. Just reflect on what happens if I say these words. Hate, Holocaust, war, playing children, joyfully, love. Okay, so you may have noticed that some words do evoke images, or maybe you were already aware that, like on the next level, maybe you were already aware that I'm trying to do that and you were counteracting that. I'm not sure, but don't think of a pink elephant, and of course you did. That's why negations don't work. But ask yourself, did you really see an image? Or maybe you, like, what kind of concept did you associate with each of these words? And how did it affect your mood? Although maybe in a very subtle way, but if you're paying attention, you should be aware that it does something. For example, with the word Holocaust. I'm pretty sure that for most people, especially if you're from Germany, because media tries to induce, the shame and guilt onto us, maybe there's this feeling of, no, get away with this topic, like I don't want anything to do with this, and I don't know, we don't talk about this. And it's a topic that is to be avoided. And then playing children, I was using, I'm hoping that this is a term that is positively set for you. And you notice the first three terms were rather negative and the last three terms were rather positive. So ask yourself, when I was saying playing children, whether there was still this negative effect from the first three words and kind of they blurred into playing children, which is supposed to be something positive. And it really depends what influence just these six terms have on you. But it could range from basically no emotion to, oh my God, the Holocaust. So, you can try to set yourself as you wish. You can be as unemotional or as emotional as you want to. But I'm just pointing to the fact that people try to manipulate you with words a lot. It happens every day. And I want you to be strong and to make your own decisions and not be manipulated as much by the outside world. So that's why I'm using these examples. So maybe you just understood that every word has an influence, has an effect on you. And except if you don't know the word or anything, but it will evoke something within your system. That's why I advise you to not, consume mainstream media, because all they do is invoke fear into you. But that's a topic for different videos. I want to come back to the quotes from the intro of this video. So the first quote, specifically the part that your words become your habits. No, it's the whole quote. It's actually the whole quote. So I think it makes sense to, if you want to change your habits, that you start with your thoughts. Because, at least for me, I think it's an easier handle, right? So let's say you're a chain smoker. Then even if you wanted to stop doing that, you may have noticed that it's not as easy. But your thoughts about this, they can change rather quickly, and it's easier to change because, they're not as material as you with your body. Like your whole body has stored information. So I'm pointing towards the idea that if you want to change your habits, maybe start with your thoughts about it. And if you heard of affirmations, then you should be aware that you should avoid negations, which is a very important thing. Don't say, I'm not a smoker anymore, because for your subconscious there is still this smoker in your head. You need always to use affirmations, positive terms. I'm healthy because I have stopped smoking. I'm independent from smoking or whatever. Like, where the focus should be on independent. So what I'm trying to say is that if you want to change a habit, maybe you start with your thoughts about it and really, I mean, that's what I do with a lot of my time and in a lot of my videos, so that I'm trying to reflect as much as I can, and it will usually also bring you back to your thoughts and your thought patterns. And if you can identify something that is, let's say, negative, or something that you want to change there, I think that's the starting point. You can't change your habits if you have completely wrong beliefs or belief structures, which may most likely have been induced into you or injected from society, from someone else, or from your parents, or from friends, or whoever knows, God knows who. And we need to clean our system from this. Yeah, and the other quote from the intro refers to the fact that words are not the reality. And like, people will use words and stories. Like, it can be a single word, but it can also be a whole story that has been told to you. And if you don't question, let's say, the story, then you may have a tendency to believe what is being said. So especially naive people easily fall for this kind of stuff. And it's a dangerous thing, because many people don't have the best intentions for you. And always be aware that words are not the reality, and that talk is cheap, you know? Yeah, I think in English the quote goes something like, "By their deeds you shall recognize them." And before it's too late, and like when the deed has already happened, that's why I'm saying try to understand the intention behind the words that are being used, and body language and everything else, because it can save you from a lot of trouble if you're already, like, you have antennas for negative intentions of someone else and the cues that they're giving you in their language. There will be other videos about this. As I said, this is just a basic introductory video about this. Yet I hope that I could inspire you a bit, or maybe remind you of things that you already knew. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you in my other videos, and wish you a wonderful day.